This is my 1990 Ford Festiva. I've had it for a couple of months, but this is the first time I've gotten around to working on it. With the new shop and stuff, I've been really busy. It sat for about 6 years. Just put a fuel pump in it, and it runs. Doesn't run the best. It's got some lifter noise and stuff like that, but we're going to make it better, and we're going to drive this thing all around. I'll probably do a couple different videos on it. We'll do some just random stuff. The first thing we're going to do is an engine flush, just because it's been sitting for a long time, one. And two, there's a chemical that I've really been wanting to try out that no one has really done a video on that I've seen. It's just been like in the deep, dark bottom of some forums from like a long, long time ago. So let's take a look. There's my S10, picked up some new radials for it. But anyway, here is what we're going to be messing with. Dimethylsulfoxide. This is a byproduct of the paper industry. It's a pretty dangerous chemical. It's a very hardcore solvent. The most hardcore solvent of organic material that I have known to exist. So it's inherently a little bit dangerous. Well, actually pretty dangerous. And you want to wear nitrile gloves when handling this and don't get it on you. What happens is it'll get into your bloodstream. It'll just permeate right through your skin and go into yourself. So anything that you mix with it, that's the problem really. This kind of won't really hurt you, but if you wash your hands and don't get all the soap off and then this touches it, it's going to bring soap right into your bloodstream, and yep, that's not good. Also, if you have oil or any other kind of thing mixed with this, which is going to be our main concern, then it'll bring oil, and all of the carcinogens and all the stuff that's in the oil will be in you. So that's really bad, and you could die or get really sick. So definitely read up on this stuff before you touch it or mess with it at all. Normally you don't see it in this kind of quantity either. That was kind of hard to get. So you want to wear nitrile gloves for sure. I'm going to double up on these, which maybe not be necessary. But if you wear latex gloves, it's going to go right through those because latex is organic. So what we're going to do is we're going to mix this stuff up here. 400 milliliters for every about 7 quarts or so. Which we're going to cut in half for the Festiva because its capacity is 3.5. So we're going to have 200 mils of DMSO. Before we do that, what I'm going to do is pull the valve cover so we can take a look and just see what the top end looks like at least. And I did do a compression check beforehand. So I need to look back at my numbers that I wrote down. That way we'll have a little bit of readings of, okay, did it just quiet the lifter noise by cleaning them? Or did we see some actual physical cleaning going on? And is our a little bit of a low compression situation due to like oil bath rings and stuck rings from sitting. Typically when we're using stuff like Auto RX and those other chemicals, we'll see compression boost after using it on cars that have been sitting, or maybe use low quality oils because it frees up those oil bath rings and piston rings. So anyway, let me get this valve cover pulled off. We'll take a look inside. We'll mix up some secret sauce, and then we'll do a series of the engine running, and then flushing. We'll have to do like 3 or 4 flushes afterwards because we want to get that stuff out of there. All right, I've got everything pulled off so we can look underneath this valve cover. We're definitely going to have to do this all over again later on because this gasket is leaking everywhere. But we've got to get it back together to run it. So let's take a look inside. I think I have everything off. There we go. So, not terrible. 137,000 miles. It's definitely not the worst I've ever seen, but also not the best. They probably did an oil change or two. Oil in here is pretty black right now. Just want to take a long, good look so we've got something to compare to later on. We've got everything back together up here, so we can go ahead and I'm going to start this for you so you can hear what the lifters sound like, and that way we can see if the engine flush helps that at all. I think it's just top end noise. I really hope we don't have any bottom end noise. But anyway, we'll crank it up. Let me go ahead and tell you the compression readings beforehand. We had really close numbers, which is good. 115 PSI, 110, 118, and 119. So all within spec, and all spec is 10% within each other. So I can't remember what this one is supposed to be off the top of my head. I want to say The last time I tested a good 1.3, they were around 145 psi. So anyway, let's go ahead and crank it up. We'll hear how it sounds. That way we can see if it changes after the engine flush. Alright, there's our before noise, and I don't know if you could tell or not, but the exhaust is a little bit loud, and I'll show you why. On my very first drive ever of this car, I heard a clanging noise, and it was right there at the end of the driveway. So I looked under the car, and all the pipe was there. Came back here, and noticed the muffler just has a big old hole in the bottom, and that's actually the cross tube from this factory turbo muffler. I'd never seen that before. I thought that was pretty funny. All right, next up, we're going to drain out this oil, then we're going to mix up our engine flush treatment. Okay, I've already got the dimethylsulfoxide in this little container right here. What we're going to do is top this off to be a quart. I'm just going to use this oil right here. I would really recommend using like a 2050 if you can. All I had in bulk at the shop was 1540, so that's going to be fine. Just don't use anything thinner than this for sure, because the DMSO is going to thin down your oil a lot. We're not going to be really driving the vehicle with it in there, but still, you want as much protection as you can. So we'll go ahead and top off this quart here. Be really careful not to overfill it, of course. Our capacity here is 3.5 quarts. We're just going to add the DMSO on top of that. So we're not going to include it in the overall. It's going to be extra. So we're going to have a little bit more than 3.5 quarts in there. Once we get this in here, we're going to start the engine up right away. Make sure you have your fans on, if you can override them and keep them on, since we're just going to be idling for a while. Or stick yourself a shop fan, a box fan, something like that in front of your radiator. What we're going to do for this very first step is run the engine for 1 hour under no load. So it's just going to sit here and idle for a straight hour. After that, we're going to drain it, refill with fresh oil, and then we're going to idle again, and we're going to do this several times, at least 3 times. I've got 4 oil filters, so we can do 3 flushes plus a final, and that should do it. All right, so we've got that in there. Dispose of this right away, especially if you got any DMSO on the outside, so you don't touch it or anything like that. Clean your funnel out really, really well. Remember, you don't want this oil and stuff getting in your skin at all. So whatever rag you use to clean this stuff up, just throw it right away. Don't try to use it for other stuff. Get it all off of this funnel real good. Use some brake cleaner. Anyway, so let's go ahead and crank this up, and we're going to let it run for 1 hour. Alright, so this has been running for 1 hour, and as you notice, the engine's a lot quieter. So I guess the DMSO has definitely cleaned up the lifters, because all that noise is gone. There's a really weird smell. So I'm wondering if we're burning some oil and some of that stuff is getting past the rings. So I actually wouldn't put a mask on, just in case. I don't know if it's going to do any good, but if I can smell that stuff, that means it's, you know, going into my body. So next up, we're going to go ahead and drain the oil. We have to do this while it's hot. So again, you need to be extremely careful. You don't want to get this stuff on you. Double up on gloves, do whatever you got to do, whatever. Don't get it on your skin. First up, I'm going to pull the drain plug, and then I'll come up top and do the oil filter. So let me move the camera down here because I want to see just how black and nasty some of this stuff is. Okay, I know the lighting is not going to be the best. Sorry, but you should be able to see some of the oil coming through at least. So this is when you want to be really careful. Try to get your arm up above the drain plug so that when you pull it out, you're pulling it out like up and away. That way you don't get any on you. And I'm going to be pretty quick. I'm going to try to move this out of the way very fast. Okay, there we go. Yep, looks really thin, very dark. Draining that first bit of oil was not nearly as dirty as I thought it was going to be. So I'm going to go ahead and do a second treatment. We're going to fill up another 200 mils of our DMSO. And I'm going to do an entire second hour of flush. Our second hour of the flush is done again. I did not video most of it. It sounded pretty much the same. Lifter tick still gone. No weird problems or new noises. We're going to go ahead and drain it out now, see what that oil looks like. All the flush is now out of the engine, so we're going to put in just fresh oil by itself. And then this one we're going to run for another hour. Depending on how dirty your engine is, you can run it for less. But what you want to do this time is vary your RPMs for 30 minutes to an hour. Just kind of up and down, nothing crazy, but somewhere between idle and 1200 RPMs. And what that's going to do is break up any kind of like sludge that's kind of getting loose, just in case you had any big pieces that are kind of floating around or starting to get loose. The higher RPMs will break them up, and the little bit of DMSO that's left in there will dissolve them. So with this flush, you don't have to really worry about a lot of big chunks clogging your screen and stuff like that because of how good of a job this flush does on dissolving everything. So even if you have any big chunks, the DMSO will break them apart and it'll come out in your oil. So we'll go ahead and get this thing started back up again. And we're going to vary our RPM between idle and 1200 for 30 minutes to an hour. Well, something interesting, our lifter tick is back. I don't know if you can hear it on camera, but I can hear it from, inside the house. That the lifter tick is back. So I don't know if that's because of the different weight in oil. That's what I'm going to assume it is. Running that 1540 in here is a heavier oil than is recommended for this engine. I think it's 1030. And now that we've got, I think I have a mixture of 530 and 1540, just whatever I kind of had laying around for a flush on this last time. I don't know if that is what's causing the lifter tick, but I'm curious to know, or I'm wondering if I should go back to 1540 to put in this engine, at least until I can get some lifters. But anyway, just some interesting information that the tick is back. So that's the third bit of oil that has been in this engine. Next up, I'm going to drain this out and put our final engine oil in it, and this will be our final flush. So for this flush, we're going to drive, 300 to 500 miles and then change it again. So that's going to be a little bit difficult because this car isn't quite ready for the road. It needs a few more tune-up things. It needs tires, needs to be inspected and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and put in the final bit of oil, And then somewhere in between driving it and getting it road ready, we're going to go ahead and pull this valve cover off again. So I'm going to order a valve cover. I may go ahead and order lifters and things like that. And then we'll finish the video off whenever we get this opened up and I can do a compression test. I'll probably do a compression test before then actually and just cut that into the video. But all right, so flush is done. Gonna drain this out and put in some new oil. Now that we've got fresh oil back in the Festiva, we can go ahead and do our compression test after our flush. So I'm going to test all 4 cylinders. I've got the distributor and the fuel injector wiring harness unplugged. All the plugs are out, and we're going to go down the line and do a compression test. Okay, I'm going to pull this up to the windshield so I can watch it, and I'll just let you know what the numbers were in a minute. Well, I retested with the compression gauge up in the window like I normally do when I'm not videoing, and I got much better numbers. But I got 140, 140, 140, and 149. So that's pretty impressive. We gained about 30 psi or so across the board. So way cool. Don't know if that's, just piston rings up top, the compression rings, or if it was oil bath rings also giving us a problem. So that's fantastic. After we do the 300 to 500 mile drive, we'll do a compression test again when we do our final oil change. But so far we're looking pretty good. As soon as I get the new valve cover gasket and everything, then we'll pull that off. We'll take a look underneath, and that will be kind of our final look. It's about a month at least later since my oil flush video series started, and everything went pretty well. I'm really impressed with how this stuff worked. I'll roll in a video, just a little short video of what the lifters and like everything looks like after flushing. I've only been able to drive the car probably 45 to 50 miles, just because it's got a ton of steering issues. It really isn't safe to drive. I drove it up to the shop and back. But the DMSO treatment has worked really well. I mean, just better than I expected. As you could see in the compression increase is pretty substantial for a short-term flush, instead of having to do one of the Auto RX treatments that takes, like 3,000 miles. As you can see, it's definitely cleaned up from where it was before. Took some time to pressure wash the whole engine bay and degrease it and all that. But yeah, let's go ahead and start it up. I did do a few other things since I started that video series. I had to do rod bearings, and then I had to replace the lifters. So I had a lifter that was definitely full of gunk and just no good. Let me see if I left my keys in here. No, let's go get them. So I had to do lifters. I did a video a little bit earlier today on having to replace the brand new lifters again, actually, because I had one fail. That's in a separate video. I guess I can link to that. But yeah, let's go ahead and crank it up so you can see what it sounds like. So much better. There's still, when the engine's cold, there's a tiny bit of bottom end noise still, so I'll revisit that later on. But the DMSO seems to have worked exactly like we wanted it to. Well, some exhaust noise, but nice and smooth as far as engine sounds go. The only thing you can hear now is fuel injectors firing. So yeah, yep. I think during the DMSO process, my lifter tick went away, but then it came back there towards the end. So I think what was happening was I think that the treatment actually freed up a good bit of nastiness, and it clogged one of the lifters, or possibly the exit port on top of the rocker arm. So that port needs to be open so it can flow oil. So I think I had mentioned the sound went away and then it came back. But anyway, after working on other stuff, I'm pretty sure that's what happened. So be prepared if you do a hardcore engine flush like this, to maybe have to address some other issues. Oil leaks are going to be one of the biggest concerns. Clogging up the pickup screen and then flowing some crud into places that you don't want. So if you're not prepared to fully open up this whatever engine you're doing this flush on, I would probably avoid this. I knew I was going to be opening this thing up, so it really wasn't a big deal to me. Like, no matter what happens, like if it clogged a lifter, if it clogged a pickup screen, it didn't really matter to me. I was going to pull it all apart anyway. So if you're working on a more complex engine, or maybe something that you can't pull apart easily, those would be things to consider. Also, I would mention that if you have an oil pan that has paint inside of it, this may be a little bit of a scary flush for that, because it is going to loosen up that paint. I did pull the oil pan, like I said, to do rod bearings, and some of the paint had been flaking off inside there. But overall, I would say the DMSO did exactly what it was supposed to do, and I'm pretty happy with it. So it gained quite a bit of compression. This car drives fantastic. It has so much more power than before. But if you have any questions, put them in the comments. Thanks for watching.